Tony Kinnett is an investigative columnist for the Daily Signal, and Charles Johnson is a writer and businessman. Who is Zohran Mamdani, and why has he become such a significant figure in New York and progressive politics, not only in America, across the country? Tony, let me start with you. Who is he, and how did he get to this place?
Oh, well, the second question is far easier to answer. I mean, one parent was a professor of goofball super left-wing studies, and the other parent was a movie producer. And so, the lap of luxury pipeline is alive and well in New York. So as far as how he got there, the failed rapping career is rather self-explanatory. And so then he got a little eye for politics during the COVID era, started getting mad, started wearing masks and showing up and acting tough. And now he's the new Obama. And that's the real answer to your first question. He's the new Obama. He is this cultural, intersectional, new progressive idea of what they really want people to be. He's got the Islamic goodness to him so that he can be pro-jihadi, which a lot of people during the Kamala Harris campaign were. It's why the Trump administration ran a Kamala supports Israel sign, or someone associated with the right, I should say, ran that billboard in Dearborn, Michigan, knowing that the young left despises Israel and loves pro-jihadi Islamism. And then, of course, he's like the Bernie Sanders kind of socialism. He's a pro-Marxist. So you get the right mix out there to yell those kinds of things. They think he's the new coalition leader of LGBTQ Marxist Islamist style coalition of the left. It's like he was created in a lab at a boarding school, and now he's running a campaign for mayor against, unfortunately, some inept campaigns.
Charles, how has he redefined what it means to be progressive today?
Well, he's really focused on working class issues, and I think one of the problems that he presents to the Democratic Party is that he's actually talking about things that people care about, like rent, the cost of food, things that the Democrats were supposed to care about before they got kind of obsessed on the trans issues and on other lifestyle liberalism issues.
But does it concern you how he's talking about those issues?
No, not at all. I think he's actually onto something. I mean, New York is an extremely unaffordable place to live, and there's a real question here as to why that is. Partly it's because of all the illegal immigrants that have come there over the years that have driven up the cost of housing, but partly it's also because of the policies of politicians on every side of the political issues in New York that have made rent unaffordable. I mean, a two-bedroom home or a two-bedroom condo in New York is up 90% on rent in the last 5 years. And that's just unaffordable and unsustainable for America's greatest.
But Mamdani wants to open the floodgates to illegals, Charles. He's not trying to slow that down.
We don't really know exactly how he's going to.
Yeah, we do know. But we do know.
We know that he's going to be much more pro-illegal immigrant than, say, the president of the United States has been. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it will translate into the far left policies that we might imagine from some of his rhetoric. I mean,
what am I sensing here from you? It seems as though you're very sympathetic to Mamdani. If you were in New York City, you could possibly be open to also voting for him.
Yeah, I've known him for 10 years now.
Oh.
And I first met him when he was at Bowdoin College. And so we go kind of far back, as it were. And, he's an actor. I think your earlier panelist was correct. I mean, he has a sort of a history of being a rap star, trying to be a rap star. His family obviously is involved in the film industry. But he's a kind of left winger for sure, but he's also kind of more of a technocrat. He's kind of one of these guys that loves to sort of fancy himself solving problems. We don't really know how he's going to do because
but he's made it clear to us that he's going to empty the prisons. He's going to push back on law enforcement. He has no interest in these petty crimes and these petty thefts, that it's a waste of taxpayer dollars locking people up and charging them. We do know. You keep trying to tell us we don't know, but that's not true.
No, I mean, it is true that he's a critic of the NYPD, but historically, the NYPD has had all kinds of issues, of police brutality, of arresting people wrongly. And so,
but Charles, that is rare. We're talking about something that rarely happens versus, let me get Kinnett back in on this conversation. Are you listening to this?
Yeah, so again, kind of the Zohran Mamdani, I don't know whether or not As far as kind of a social support thing, I do take issue with the idea that he's really focused on workers' rights and workers' issues. My co-panelist is right, by the way, that this is something the Democrats have abdicated their responsibility to fight for. You'll remember Bill Clinton in the 90s. This was one of the reasons he was so popular in the Rust Belt. I mean, he came out of Arkansas for that reason in particular. And it should be said that right now, yes, there are a lot of problems in New York City, but essentially Mamdani's solutions to them, essentially you walk in and someone says, doctor, I've got a stomach ache. And the doctor says, you know what we need to do? Carolyn, get the leeches. Let's bleed him. And then, you know what? The guy dies on the table. That's what Mamdani is suggesting here. So as far as like working on suggesting issues, I think, Armstrong, this is what you took issue with. We do know what his solutions lead to, because New York City has had the insurance collection fires after rent control in the 70s. And this is the issue with Mamdani. He is an actor, and I appreciate the nod from my co-panelist here, but he is illiterate in a lot of ways. You see this when he actually tries to describe why he believes what he believes. He simply believes that he can just snap his fingers and then presto, it's utopia, as though he's Glenda the Good Witch. He's going to walk in and cure Munchkin Land. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. New York is complex, but every time Mamdani has said this is a problem, his solution has been wrong. And not just the kind of wrong where, let's say Andrew Yang, for instance, he was kind of a flash excitement of the Democrat Party suggesting universal basic income. The problem with Andrew Yang was that he had grandiose ideas and some ideas that hadn't really been tried just yet. Mamdani's pitching ideas that have been tried before, and they're awful for the working class.
Hold that.
You don't even have to talk about the NYPD and illegals.
Hold that, because I want to engage Charles when we come back to respond to many of the things that you've said, because like he said, he knows this person. I've not really talked to someone who really knows Mamdani and who empathizes with Mamdani, so I'm glad Charles is here to address many of the concerns of not just New Yorkers, but the rest of this country. We'll be back. Shock. Charles Johnson, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing is a generational shift within the Democratic Party, and Zohran Mamdani is the first of many candidates that we're going to start seeing that campaign in a similar kind of way. It started out with his skepticism of Netanyahu. We've seen sort of historically he's been against having Netanyahu come to New York. We certainly see that he's in favor of trying to lower the rents by increasing building in New York City. As well as having a rent freeze, which is a huge issue for people trying to get their start in America's greatest city. But in the main, I think it remains to be seen how he's going to actually govern. And obviously, he's, barring something crazy, he's likely to become New York's next mayor. I've found him always very personable and quite smart and quite well studied. I don't necessarily agree with every one of his policies, but we've seen this before, with politicians where they say they're going to build the wall, and then obviously the wall doesn't get built, right? And obviously hope and change is another kind of empty kind of slogan. So it kind of remains to be seen how he's actually going to be.
But how does he balance identity politics with broader social goals?
Well, in the main, New York is changing. I mean, New York is not the place of Giuliani's New York or Bloomberg. I mean, I think right now there's something like 1 million Muslims or thereabouts in the greater boroughs. He represents a lot of their interests, or at least they see him as representing their interests. And he's a kind of different type of politician in that he's not, kind of a lock him up. It's not 2000. It's not like we don't have an epidemic of murders in New York like we did in the 90s when Giuliani was necessary. So things are changing there, and I think he is himself representative of that change. Now, obviously, he's going to have to deal with Albany, though Governor Hochul has come out and endorsed him, unlike, say, Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of these tensions between the younger members of the Democratic Party and the old guard. And I think a lot of the old guard is in effect going to get retired over the next few years.
including Chuck Schumer losing the AOC. Tony,
I suspect Schumer will maybe even resign or announce his resignation after the shutdown fight with Mike Johnson. That would be my.
So Tony, what is that symbolizes for us listening to Charles here, and Mamdani and Kato. You know, Charles just insinuated that Mamdani is a substack of a growing greater influence of this kind of thinking and this ideology in our country, and they're poised to win elections.
So, I mean, I do agree with him that it is the newer generation wing of the Democrat Party. Of course, we see that with the Democrat mayoral candidate up in Minneapolis, the Somali. We see a lot of these young candidates that are embracing this kind of stuff. Former journalists running for congressional seats in Illinois, for example. I've seen this in Indiana right now. We have a couple of other incoming candidates that are kind of echoing this same stream. I disagree that it's new, and I disagree that he's different. And I don't think that's true at all. There is no evidence that suggests or supports that. Mamdani comes from the lap of luxury. He does. He comes from the exact same boarding school, fancy college, white glove, little kid goodness that always comes out of these types of coastal elites running for office, and then claiming all of a sudden, oh, I'm just like you. You see, there's Jasmine Crockett, right? Private school in St. Louis, had just a higher educated style academia in America, kind of out of the 90s, an aught style accent. And then she starts parroting Tyler Perry movie accents in order to gain some kind of street cred that doesn't even sound like any definable inner city Black American linguistic from Chicago or Atlanta or areas where there are definable accents. And you see this with Mamdani too, where he's trying to essentially code switch to say, well, I'm new and exciting and nothing's ever been tried before. Every one of Mamdani's ideas from the mayoral level, including rent freezes, which have never worked once, ever. They've never worked. Reduction of the certain, regulations that actually create a system of difficulty for no new building projects. We have to follow all of these rules. That's one of the things that we can point to objectively that is keeping rent high in New York. And everyone can shake their heads or nod or grumble about reducing regulations and building new buildings, but that's a provable fact. And as to my co-panelist here suggesting that we don't know how Mamdani is going to govern here, being the mayor of a city is a lot different than being the president of the United States. There's a lot of power that the mayor has in plenary authority in New York City regarding the New York Police Department, things that Mamdani has promised to reform, regarding funneling city funds into these socialist-style projects. He does have some authority to do those particular things. And we know, based on history in this country and abroad, how those work. So, I mean, yeah, it may be a rising run in the Democrat Party. I disagree with the Schumer prediction. I think AOC runs for the presidency in 28. I think that there's a lot that suggests that based on her around the country private jet tour with Bernie Sanders. But, I mean, I guess we'll have to see on the other end of that one. But it's a fad, but it's not new.
We'll have Charles respond on the other side of this break. This is the Armstrong Williams Show, and we'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion. And that is, there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. Charles, your reply to Tony?
I would say that the conditions of the 1990s or 1970s New York are not the same as the conditions today. And as for Mamdani's background in terms of his family upbringing, I mean, we have had billionaires be mayor of New York before too. I mean, there's a sort of artifice that comes with running for office. People often lie about their backgrounds. What I find interesting
but you said he was different.
Well, what I find interesting about him is that, first of all, he was not born in this country, so he's not going to be a rising star of the Democratic Party. He's not eligible to run for president, born as he is in Uganda. And we don't really know too much about him other than his sort of record in the assembly, which suggests far left.
He never showed up. It was an absenteeism.
That's right. He was rarely there, so we don't really know what he really believes.
But
so he's a kind of sniper.
Doesn't it say something about his respect for the constituency that they elect him and he never shows up? He's never present. Isn't that an indication of who he is?
I mean, that sounds an awful lot like Barack Obama. I mean, it sounds like an awful lot of other political figures we've had over the years who get the position and then. Well, we'll see. We'll see how he actually ends up governing.
No, you didn't say we'll see if he's different. You said he is different.
Well, he does have different
ideas. Evidence.
Well, for one, his platform is much larger and more robust than any left-wing mayor that we've seen in the past. He has much more of a program around not just freezing rent, but also adding housing to it. That's not something we've seen before. When we saw the rent controls in the 1970s, it was just about rent control. It wasn't about decreasing regulations around buildings. So that's one thing. And then you look at his coalition, and it's much more robust. It's not just a kind of, ethnic New York of the past. I mean, Giuliani got by, in a squeaker against Dinkins in a very controversial election. There's not really any of that kind of animus, going on in this election here. It looks like he's going to win at least by 10 points. And then the real question I think we should be asking ourselves is, why has the Democratic Party so utterly failed to really put up a challenge to him if he is so radical? I mean, Cuomo is, credibly accused of all kinds of shenanigans and misbehavior with women. And it says something about the future of the party.
Well, some would say because he's catering to such a strong youth following that many of them want a lot of free stuff. They want the government to take care of them. They don't want to be accountable and responsible. And they have no idea what he's advocating and how it's going to play out in the years ahead.
Well, it's certainly
so he's exploiting their naivete and their lack of experience.
It's certainly a protest vote. And if you do look at, as I said before, on rents, if you look at a lot of affordability issues in New York, they are like massively unsustainable. And that's not something that older New Yorkers had to contend with. And so it may be the case that lots of people end up moving to Florida. I think they're already doing that as it is, or moving to Texas. But yeah, New York is going to have to change. And
there's a difference moving to Florida because you don't want the government taking all the hard-earned money and the wealth that you created. It's different than what you're comparing to what you say Mamdani's support system. This is totally different. These people have built something. They've created something in their lives.
No, I mean, a lot of people bought housing right after the 2008 crash, or they bought housing during the 1990s when things were much more unaffordable and dangerous in New York, and they benefited from New York changing. And there's a lot of people. There are a lot of assets that are going to change hands with the election of a Mamdani. There's no doubt about it. And I think we're also kind of not thinking seriously enough about the fact that lots of sovereign wealth funds in Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar, they're not going to allow the first Muslim mayor of the United States not to have some big projects announced. They're certainly going to want to invest into our largest city. And if there is a kind of change in the price of rents there, we could see New York have a real renaissance. So I'm more optimistic about it.
Tony, your reply?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to make this really clear. You don't get to claim both that you don't know what's going to come and that everything that's going to come is good. You don't get to do both of those. You get to do one of them. You can say, look, we don't know what he's going to do. It's a mystery. It's what's behind door number one. It's the Pelosi. We got to pass it to find out what's in it regarding the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. But then at the same time, you can't go, oh, well, we all know this, and they're all good things. You can't have it both ways. Either we know based on his campaign and the promises he's made how he's going to govern, or he's just making a lot of promises to get elected, and then we really don't know what he's going to do. You can't have it both ways.
Mayors are often
and as we know, let me finish. In the past, As we know from prior mayoral candidates in New York City, as we know from prior elections, the strategies that mayors have tried, the strategies that other mayors around the country and around the world have tried, in the same vein as Mamdani, who have tried these particular approaches. And by the way, you also can't say, oh, this is totally different than freezing rent in the 70s, and not explain how. If you're going to actually analyze the policies that are going to impact, as you said, our greatest economic and cultural city in the country, then you need to delineate for voters why. You can't just go, oh, he's young and look at the coalition. Whoop-de-doo. Again,
Well, for one,
the
he
difference
has a
of Mamdani and
relationship-
everyone else is
so-
what? That there are more gay
hold-
people voting for him? Who gives
No,
the
well,
flip?
so he
for
has a
Nick?
relationship-
We're gonna come back with some final thoughts, gentlemen. Hold it right there. We'll be back.
Sure.
Thank you.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
Charles, please continue.
No, so we know he has a relationship with Governor Hochul, and obviously whatever agenda he wants to pass is going to go through Albany. So that, to me, is the big question of how does he actually navigate that. But we don't really know how any mayor is going to govern in the final analysis, because there are events that happen. I mean, who could have predicted 9/11 or the financial crisis or COVID? So I think we need to be sort of open to the fact that New York is one of our most dynamic cities. It changes, literally all the time. Lots of different people move there from all over the world. And so the question for Mamdani is whether or not he's able to actually capture the excitement of his campaign and actually govern effectively. And that's a very open question. And as to the question of him being a left-wing radical, I mean, people often campaign as one thing and then do another thing. So my impression of him and sort of, I wouldn't say that I know him. I would say that I've had conversations with him. My impression of him is just as you say, that he is a kind of actor. He is a kind of somebody who wants to be famous, somebody who wants to be a sort of celebrity. But that can be a good thing. I mean, he can tie his own fate to the fate of the city. And, certainly we have a different approach here. He's a 33, 34-year-old guy. And that is a new thing in as a mayor of a city that is increasingly quite old. And so we're going to sort of see how that shakes out.
Tony, we have 30 seconds. You've got the last word.
When I was about 27 years old, I started running a nonprofit, and I thought that I would essentially be able to fake it as I made it because, hey, I can do this just like everyone else. That's not true. You do actually need experience. It matters. Number two, how someone campaigns does in fact rule how they govern. We've seen this with major congressmen. We've seen this with mayors. We've seen this all over the country. Number three, I'm sorry, the idea that, well, I'm sure he means well and he's an actor, so he's going to tie its fate, that's coping. That's coping because you can't explain why he's a good candidate or why anyone should vote for him. Saying he cares about the worker is exhausted, it's tried, and it often leads to policies that hurt workers. He's a scam artist, and people are falling for it.
Well, listen, Charles, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today, and Tony Kinnett. I urge people to go out and do your homework, do your own research. Don't take their word for it. Examine their record. The best way to determine what a politician will do if they're elected is to judge what they've done in the past. That is the best indicator. I'm Armstrong Williams. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of WJLA 24/7, we're out of here.